Welcome to Factorio Masterclass. My name is Nilaus, and this is the series of tutorials and guides here on YouTube covering all aspects of the game and aims to provide insights and resources to help you improve. In this episode, we're going to talk about power management through all phases of the game, from your very first boiler and steam engine to the very end of the game when your PC cannot keep up anymore, and how to mix and match all the way through. These masterclass sessions are usually inspired by my Let's Plays and the community interaction. So I'm, for example, streaming over on Twitch. This is at twitch.tv/Nilaus. And you're very welcome to drop by. I am streaming 6 days a week, and Tuesday, Thursdays, and Sundays it is Factorio on the menu. The streams always start at 8 p.m. Central European Time. And feel free to drop by and discuss designs and upcoming guides and whatever else you feel like. And let me just get this out of the way. If you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. If you have ideas, comments, or feedback, leave it in the comment section below on our Discord server or during the live streams. Let's dive in. In this video, we're going to talk about all of the different methods of generating power. So we're going to, of course, start with the boiler based here, the fuel into boilers, into steam engines, and we're going to talk about solar, we're going to talk about nuclear, and we're going to talk about how to mix and match and when to use what and how to transition between them, and also how to control the interactions between them. So obviously, naturally, we are going to start with the very first things. What are the first power you're going to build at the very early part of the game? Now at this point, you just have a few assemblers and your crashed ship, and you want to get the power. So let me just start very basic how power works in this game, because I think that's how we need to start it. You're going to start by getting an offshore pump, and it's going to pump some water into some boilers. You're going to need to feed some water in, some fuel, in this case coal, but it could also be wood, for example, and to the boilers. The boilers convert the water into steam at a 1-to-1 ratio, and the steam goes into a steam engine and gets converted into power. Now, if we just look at some metrics here on this one is generating 60. It says consuming 60 up to 60 per second, and it also outputs 60 per second. Each of these can consume 30 per second. So the ratio is always, without a doubt, 1 boiler to 2 steam engines. It's that simple. And you can see here, the boiler, it says it's using 1.8 megawatts of power. Each coal contains 4 megawatts of power. So you can get the ratio of how much is being consumed here. And the beginning here, that's not really our concern. There are many patterns for how to build this. I built it like this for the specific reason that it is the max distance on the small power poles. That means you can build these very simple all the way up. That's just how I do it. There are many other ways to do this, but this is mine. So you got the first power set up here, and it will feed the first few assemblers, but it's obviously not going to last very long. So how are we going to scale it up from here? At this point, you can see this one, each of these produce 900 kilowatts, so that's 1800 kilowatts or 3.6 megawatts of power from all of this together, which is pretty nice. I mean, it'll cover what we need for the small assemblers here, but it won't build a big base out of it. And here we have a bit later on into the game, and we have a bigger build. Now this is a build. Let's do copy here so we can see it is 20 boilers and 40 steam engines. And there's a really good reason why I do it this way. One boiler is consuming 60 water. So times 20, that's 1200 water. If I look at this one, it can at maximum produce 1200 water per second. So one offshore pump can at maximum feed 20 boilers and therefore also 40 steam engines. So that's going to be your basic size that you want to build it. Don't build it any bigger than that. If you're in a position like this where we currently don't use the power, it's tempting to build it bigger because you can see there's still stuff on the belt. This is where it comes back to the previous talk about how big can you actually make it. So in this case, this is my preferred way of building it. I built 2 of these. That takes two offshore pumps going in, and then I feed it in here. When I get a lot of excess wood, I will always start feeding it in here. And in this case, I would actually rather have the wood being burned first. Now, if we look at the wood, it has lower burn value than coal. So if we just start with a coal belt and just imagine that we only have coal coming in here. If we have all of these working at 100%, you really don't want that. But if you do have it at 100%, then each of these is consuming 0.45 coal per second. The reason why I do that is because it's 1.8 divided by 4 joules. And then if I multiply this by having 40 boilers, then that's 18 per second. That means if you have all of this working at full operation, one yellow belt will not be enough. I think that's very important to keep that in mind, so that you don't accidentally go overboard. It can, if you just feed in a yellow belt of coal, and this is exactly what is likely to happen if I were to do something like this, then you would also see that we would just, this teeny tiny location here just can't keep up if we're running purely on coal power. So that's not very good, and that's so keep in mind. So if you want this whole build, you must have a red belt if you're using coal, and if you're getting a mixture of coal and wood, then you definitely need a red, because if you're using only wood, then not even a red belt can keep up with this. And that's also super important to keep in mind, that if you feed this in only with wood, then 40 will actually consume more than the belt can handle. It can consume 36 per second. But then again, you don't want your coal running at max power anyway. Once you have this size, then the question is, well, can you just double it? Yes, you can. You can absolutely just build more of these next to each other, and you'll just increase your coal consumption. However, I would say building one of these should be the limit, but you can also build two if for whatever reason you have lots of coal or lots of trees that you want to burn. Then build two of these, but don't go bigger than that. In anything bigger than that, then you really should have changed to the next stage of the power pyramid, and that's solar. So let's look at the solar and how you sort of transition into solar when you've built this amount of power coming from coal or wood. Now let's talk a bit about solar power. Solar power is a weird beast, and well, let's take a look at it. So we're gonna get some solar panels, just stamp them down here. Wow, just already I'm building a bad pattern. Get a solar power here. So the way it works is, if I look at here over a 10-minute cycle, you can see that the solar is producing at a max capacity. That is the max capacity of 60 kilowatt per, no, not per anything, 60 kilowatt, per solar panel. 60 kilowatt, and then at the nighttime it drops off to nothing, a very short time, and then it comes back up. So you're gonna need some kind of power in the meantime. And what you see here is that I have a transition between the steam engine that we built earlier and then solar power. This is how I would propose that you start it, because you don't need to build any oil. So at the point where you don't have oil yet, you can still transition into solar power, because what it can do is it can alleviate the majority of the day, so that you only have steam power for the nighttime. That's very good. It limits your pollution, which is really nice, especially in the beginning, and especially in this case where I'm playing on a death world. So you really want to just transition into solar power as fast as possible, and not wait until you have accumulators. So the thing with solar panels, you just build a lot of them, and this is what I've done down here. Just build a lot of them. In this case, there is actually a good reason why I built in this pattern. We'll see. And that's really where the first thing is. First, you really want to build your solar power just to do exactly what's happening here. Take some of the pressure off your steam engines. Also, as your base grows, you're going to need more power. It's better to add more solar power than to do this. So that's just when we have the solar panels, and then it gets more advanced once you get the accumulators. So let's jump into the part where I have accumulators, and we need to start making a consistent design for it, and also how to do the balancing between the coal power and the solar power. Let's go a bit more into detail with the solar power. So at this point we have the accumulators as well, and this is where things become a bit more complicated, to say the least, because you'd really want the solar power to run during the day and then the accumulators to run during the night. That is a very good perspective. So there are some key ratios you need to remember and keep in mind. One of them is, how many accumulators do you need to bridge the gap of the nighttime until the solar power comes back? So let's say you only have solar and accumulators. There's no backup coal. There's nothing else. You just have solar power. And in that case, what is the ratio? Like how many solar panels to how many accumulators do you need so that the solar will last through the day, but as it dips, there is enough power charged in the accumulators so that it will last during the nighttime? The answer is 25 solar panels to 21 accumulators. Why? Because that's the way it is. There you go. I love giving good explanations. There, that one, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So basically, you'd want to make a pattern that is repeatable like this, and of course has power poles as well. And if you do that, then you can just stamp that pattern down anywhere. So there are lots of different ways to do it. Mainly, the objective is that you are going to figure out how big you want your template. You want a city block size, or do you want a different size? So in this case, I want just something that tiles easily, and because it's relatively early game, or at least mid game I would say, then we need the medium power poles to be sort of at the center. So I've designed this pattern here that I am super happy about. It has 2 advantages. They are equally important. One is it is pretty close to a perfect ratio, and the other one is it does not look like a swastika. Well, that's kind of important because that's really difficult when you have something in Factorio and everything is just squares, and you make something and then suddenly you have some unfortunate rotational symmetry. So that's gotta be something you gotta be careful of. There. So this pattern looks innocuous in and of itself. If we look at it, we can see that it has way too many accumulators. So I said it was 25 solar panels to 21 solar panels. 25 solar panels to 21 accumulators. But as we propagate this, the outside where let's see, the ratio will gradually become closer and closer to the perfect ratio. It'll actually slightly skew if depending on sort of your size of it. Oh yeah, I don't have sneak through, so I have to be a bit more careful with how I plant this. If we look at it now, the ratio here, it's getting closer, and if I scale it up, it's getting closer again. So now you can see that there are almost as many solar panels as there are accumulators. As we keep scaling it up, we will now see that the number of solar panels overtake the number of here, and as we scale it up even bigger, we will be able to see that it's better. All right, so what I've done here is, you can see I have this pattern. I put some roboports in here and there just to make sure that it can be built. If we look at this design here, all of this 666. If I plot in 666 divided by 25 multiplied by 21, I will get 558. So perfect ratio here. I have another thing here. This is 702 divided by 25 multiplied by 21 is going to be 592. So also pretty much perfect ratio. And that's the beauty of this pattern, is that when you pick big fields, it gets very, very close to perfect ratio. And that's why I built this pattern in the beginnings, because it helps us a lot. So at this point, you are going to say, okay, what does the power look like in this case? Well, let's look at power. We have the solar panels is going to going to provide us with all the power we need during the day. And then during the night, what happens is the accumulators start going in. And then at some point we'll just see, okay, we have to supplement with some steam power here as well. You could actually run it all the way through, but then you don't have anything left. I want to be just a bit careful on this one, because I'm always scaling up at this point. I'm scaling up the base, I'm continuously losing more. So I don't want to be in a position where I scale up during the night and then suddenly run out of accumulators, and then we're screwed, because the steam engines cannot really support it. Let's jump on over to see where... thank you, science. Let's jump on over to see how I control... Oops, there's this facing in and facing out. All right, here we are. We are at the coal power plants, and I want to show you how this is controlled. This is controlled by a single accumulator. All the accumulators in the network will be hooked up and will be combined into one entity, and that will go up and down together. Now you can hook this up to with a red wire, and it'll output a signal. In this case, it'll default to output signal A, which will be the sort of the percentage charge. This percentage charge is fed on the red wire to all of the offshore pumps, and they will be working as such, so that this one says it's only active when the total accumulator charge in the network is less than 10%, less than 20%, less than 30%, and less than 40%. So what this means is that gradually, as the accumulator charge falls down during the night, then it'll switch on more of these columns one by one. And therefore, it's not going to be like everything goes on at once. And that means lots of coal consumption, but it's more a matter of it'll just switch it on gradually and depending on how much we need. Let's take a look at the power. Here we are. We're not really using a lot of power in the space because the science has stopped. So let's start. Let's do an upgrade in speed so we can see if we can get this. See if we can get it during the nighttime. I don't think so because we don't really have a lot here. Let's see. Boom. Accumulators are now in production. You can see the accumulator charge decreasing. Decreasing. If it gets below 40, it does not get below 40. It just got below 40 a tiny bit here. And these ones switched on momentarily a few times, flickering on and off as the solar came in. But that's also what we want to do. We want to make sure that we have in a base such as this, we have the full charge available on the accumulators. But this one is a good transition. Okay, I can't walk when I'm this fast. Ooh, there you go. So that's how you control the transition from coal power into solar power by gradually first adding some solar, then adding some accumulators, and then controlling how much your coal power is working. And at some point you'll realize that the coal power hasn't run for a long time and you don't really need it anymore. It's just there as a backup. Now the next transition is obviously to add nuclear power to the build, and I do have a specific nuclear power tutorial which goes through how to build it. So in this case we're just gonna imagine that you know how to build it. If you want more details about how and how the whole uranium chain works, I would recommend checking out that tutorial first. Now here is a small nuclear power plant. This is a 4-reactor build. This is from my masterclass on nuclear power. You can find it in that blueprint. I really like it. I find it to be super neat. You can either feed it with belts or with bots. In this case, I'm feeding with bots. Delivers just four offshore pumps worth of water going in here, 464 megawatts of power. And the most important thing here is that at this point you can see that our solar panels are just taking care of the daytime, and then during the nighttime the steam turbines, that's the nuclear power, is actually coming in. We still have these steam engines. It's the same base as before, but they are never going to be active. Also, the accumulators are not really being active because I'm using the steam turbines, i.e. the nuclear power, before. So at this point, you will, as soon as you stamp down just a small one like this, I am pretty sure you're going to double up your power, depending of course on when you build it. But at this point, for example, in this space, I have 258 megawatts of power coming from solar panels. That's the peak capacity. When you want to find sort of how much that could support during the day, then you take your peak capacity. In this case, I'm going to do 4,300, and each of those are producing 60 kilowatts, so that's going to be 258 megawatts. And if I want to know how much that is, if I only run it on solar and accumulators, then I multiply by 0.7, and then I get about 180. So I have consistent 180 megawatts of power, which is just barely enough for what we have here. And this is why it's so important for us to actually get some nuclear power up and running, because we were starting to use our steam engine backups during the nighttime. Not great. So as soon as you stamp down the nuclear power, you just add 464 megawatts of power on top of this, which is a fair bit, and more than double it, and you will be settled when it comes to power for the foreseeable future. I can't imagine that you this will get you to launching rockets and launching the first 100 rockets if you want, and it'll last until you start adding modules and beacons to everything. The final stage of the game is when you get into the megabasing, and that is very much power dependent, so you're going to need to manage your power very well in the end game and the late game. And before we dive into that, I'd just like to take a moment to thank the patrons who are supporting the channel. Without you, dear patrons, it would not be possible for me to run this channel the way I do, delivering the Let's Plays here, the Let's Plays on Twitch, all the other things aside from the Factorio part, being able to do all this and do all the nuclear power switching on. Nice. Do all the amazing things. So thank you very much, patrons. And if you want to support the channel, there's of course no obligation at all, but if you do want to support, then there is a link to the Patreon, and that's the best way to support the channel and the work I do here. Thank you very much. Let's take a look at a Megabase, right? So this is a Megabase. This is my recent Twitch series that just ended, the Factorio launch series, and this is a pretty big base. Let's have a look at the power consumption in this base. We are looking at it here on a 10-minute cycle. We're basically at this point, we have 548,000 solar panels in the build, and we also have some nuclear power. This is just a minuscule amount in here. I've just switched it on right now so that you could see it, and I'm using, for nuclear power, I'm using this location. This location is my 8 reactor city block sized. It's also part of the nuclear power tutorial blueprint. So if you want this one and go like, that's nice, I want it, then go check it out. It's in that blueprint. So this one is nuclear power. It delivers 1120 megawatts of power. So pretty decent chunks. I have 5 of those, although I have actually disabled them. So if I just disable these again, here, don't want it enabled. I just wanted it enabled so you can see it. So one of the things is, why would I build 548,000 solar panels when I could just stamp down some nuclear power plants? Why would I fill up the entire base here with solar panels when I could just make a few of these? Now, if we look at this power-wise here, each of these is producing 1120. So 5 of those produce, I would say, about a fifth of the solar power. If you look at it, then it takes 5 city blocks worth of this, and this one takes an ungodly amount of city blocks. I don't even know how many city blocks it takes, but hundreds, I would say. So this is way more space efficient. So why, oh why wouldn't I just do that all the time? And the reason is, well, the reason is that this one is using calculations to look at the heat. Every single tick that is 60 ticks per second, it will have to calculate the spread of heat during these, the steam going in and out here, the steam going in, out, water going in, flowing back and forth. All of that has to be calculated for every single one all the time. While solar panel, super simple, it's just there. It's just a single entity. From a gaming perspective, it's just a single entity multiplied by a number, an integer number. And it's, yeah, there you have it. It's very easy on the calculations to do solar power, while the calculations to do nuclear power is a lot more extensive. So for that reason, if you are going to build a base that will eventually not be playable because of your PC requirements, the performance requirements, then go solar. Just go solar all the way. And that's why I did this in this case, because I wanted to maintain my FPS, UPS as high as possible. I think actually I can support it. I can almost support it. No, I can't support it. When I run it locally, I can support this running 6060, and that is because I don't have my nuclear. That's one of the reasons. It's one of those small things that you can do in order to optimize. And I don't want to have a lot of fluid calculation. I don't want to have a lot of heat calculations. I want this game to run as smoothly as possible, and it's just more efficient from a performance perspective to build a stupid amount of solar panels. So that's what I do. But if you're not going to be constrained by this, if you don't think that's a problem, or you're going to build so big that you end up maybe running at 4040 and that's okay for you, by all means, save yourself a lot of headache and production and capacity and landfilling and all that stuff, and just build nuclear. I would say that it's maybe if the nuclear power is running, it takes maybe 5% of your performance or something, and at the edge of performance, at the marginal value, those 5% are really important. But if you're not going to be in that situation, by all means, just go nuclear for the end game. It's much more simple, and you're never ever going to run out of uranium so that's not going to be a concern. And there you have it. It's those are the different transitions and different ways of doing power. We start with our very simple coal power plant. We scale up the coal power. We start adding solar without accumulators to alleviate some of the power during the daytime. Then as we get accumulators, we want to control that the accumulators are working before the coal power, so the coal power just becomes a backup. And at some point we'll transition more into solar power so that we simply don't use our coal power anymore. And then we'll realize the point where we just can't scale up fast enough. It's just going to continue to consume too much of the base resources by scaling up on solar. So we add nuclear power. As we scale up, add more and more nuclear power. But if you get to the megabase and you really want to scale up and be sure to get the maximum performance, you need to start adding lots and lots and lots of solar power and it's going to take a long time to get the solar power up. Not surprisingly, adding 500,000 solar panels takes a bit of time, just production-wise, landfill-wise, robots building it takes a while. So those are basically the transitions of power during the game. I hope that it was helpful to you. If it was helpful and if you're still awake, then hit the like button, because I guess you liked the video. Leave a comment below if you feel there's something I missed or something you'd like me to go into more detail with. Then we can always add it to another session later on. If you want to watch live, or if you have some questions you want immediate answers to, then head on over to Twitch. I am streaming live on Twitch TV/Nilaus, and I'm streaming it 6 nights a week. Tuesday, Thursdays, and Sundays are usually my Factorio nights. So do drop on by and ask all sorts of Factorio questions, or any other questions for that matter. You're very welcome. We have a good conversation going while building awesome factories. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you like it. I hope to see you again some other time here on the channel, either on YouTube, on Twitch, or on Discord. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay effective.